Welcome, everyone, to the Flower Files podcast sponsored by Wildly Native Flower Farm. Here, everyone is welcome to talk with fellow flower lovers, including real perspectives from the farm, the flowers, and me, the florist.
From the messy day-to-day operations down to the details and even business perspectives, this podcast has a little bit of everything to keep it real. We know that life can get crazy and we don't always have the time to spend on what we love, so we are here to help you take a little time to indulge in nature. I'm Liza Getz.
I'm Lizzie Frey, and we are the team that makes this podcast. Every once in a while, we have a couple guests, this business thing, and what we are working with is called life.
Join us as we walk you through how to think outside the box, talk from the farmer's perspective, have honest conversations about florals, and how to run, well, life. So listen in.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, in the podcast section, and any of your other podcast platforms. You can also find us online at wildlynativeflowerfarm.com, and in an easy way, you can look in the show notes, and all of the information will be right there for easy access.
I scrolled through wedding inspiration and thought, okay, but how do I make this look, feel like us, and not like everyone else's wedding this year? Today's guest, wedding designer Julie Comfort, is here to break down exactly how to go from scattered Pinterest boards to a cohesive, lived-in, meaningful wedding design without losing your mind, your budget, or your personality in the process. We're talking color stories, flowers, textures, how to communicate with your design team, and what to skip so you can focus on what actually matters. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Flower Files, the podcast for flower lovers, farmer florists, and anyone obsessed with creating beautiful, meaningful spaces with blooms. I'm your host, Liza from Wildly Native Flower Farm, and around here we talk about everything from growing and sourcing flowers to designing events and building a sustainable floral business. Today, we're stepping into the world of wedding design, not just the flowers, but the whole visual story. Because your bouquet, your tables, your ceremony backdrop, none of that lives in a vacuum. It all has to work together. To help unpack this today, I'm joined by Julie Comfort. Julie is a wedding creative who specializes in turning vague vibes and mood boards into cohesive, intentional design. Think color, layout, textures, and that feeling guests get when they wow moment when they arrive. So Julie, I am so happy you're here. Welcome to the Flower Files.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we dive into all the fun designer talk, I'm going to ask you to share a quick little snapshot of who you are and how you got started into the wedding world.
Yeah, so actually before I became a designer, I was a destination wedding photographer for more than 10 years, photographing weddings all over the world. And I really loved that. But in 2015, I moved to Europe and I was a little bit daunted by starting my business over from scratch. And to be honest, after more than 300 weddings, I was feeling a little bit burned out. So I decided to go back to school and study experience design. And right away, it was clear to me that this was the thing that so many weddings that I had been to were kind of missing. I think weddings had started to all feel a little bit the same to me, and experience design kind of filled in the gap between what I think couples were envisioning and what the reality actually turned out to be. And so I shifted gears, and in 2020, I started my business, the Experiential Wedding, and I focus on helping couples and planners design the overall guest experience of their wedding. And that starts from the moment someone first hears about it until, months after it's over and they are reminiscing about it. And we go through the entire process and make sure that everything fits together holistically, that it's all aligned with the couple's intention and vision, and that every moment is really meaningful and connected to who the couple are.
So I feel like for years it's been this process where couples get engaged. They send out invitations. People come. They go to the ceremony, wait around a little bit because, there's pictures and things. They eat, they cut the cake, they toss the flowers, and everybody knows, okay, this is what's going to happen. But that's not what's happening anymore, right?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a big push towards focusing more on the guest experience and things like flow and making sure that transitions from one thing to another are really flowing. And I think couples are also rethinking even the timeline and making sure it's more immersive and cohesive, and that it isn't just kind of like we do this thing, then we do this thing, then we do this thing, and it doesn't really necessarily fit their vibe or what they're looking for. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely a push towards prioritizing guest experience, personal touches, and immersiveness, and really looking at the flow and making sure that people are connecting and that it just kind of feels like one of those events that you just had to be there. It's really special and magical and kind of you just feel like you're in the right place at the right time and really grateful to have been a part of it and a just like a deep sense of belonging. I think that's really what couples are focusing on more these days.
And I agree with what you were saying just now about how it's immersive and it's about the guest understanding the couple. It's not this great big huge thing anymore. It's more about everyone being together. And I love how it has shifted and become this absolutely incredible, amazing experience. So I would love to kind of back up and start at the beginning and hear your perspective on what actually is wedding design and why does it matter so much more than just picking those pretty things?
So I'm actually an experience designer, and so I'm really focused on the moments, the rituals, and the experiences of a wedding. So a traditional wedding planner will focus more on all of the aesthetic details, and I think those things are all really important. But I think sometimes couples sort of choose these things based on what they see on Pinterest and what looks cool and without really putting a lot of thought into whether or not it really fits who they are and what their overall intention is for the wedding. And so, my work is really about making sure that all of the details, from the flowers to the decor, the music, the food, that they all holistically fit together and tell a story and really leave a lasting impression with guests because a lot of times people don't really remember the details. They remember how they felt. But I think if you can build the details into the experience and everything fits together, then those details really do linger with people.
And it really makes it so much more personalized.
hmm
It makes it make sense. I love thinking about it as a story and a feeling, not a checklist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
When you first meet with a couple, what are the first few questions you ask to start pulling that story out of them?
The first question I ask is why they want to have a wedding. Not why they want to get married or commit to each other, but why it's important to have a wedding and why now and why with this particular group of people. What need is it that the wedding serves for them and for their community? And I think honing in on that and really knowing what it means to them because it is a really important life milestone, but it's also something that connects us to our community and really understanding like why this is important to us really helps get clear on what then we need it to do. What do we need the wedding to be in order for it to serve this need, not just for the couple, but for their community as well? And so that's kind of the first big question. And then we get more detailed into, what is your vision for the wedding? Like, how do you imagine it? What would your dream wedding feel like? Not just what will it look like, because I think that's what most wedding advice sort of focuses on is what it will look like. But what do you want it to feel like, not just for you, but for your friends and family, for people who are maybe traveling from far away and investing a lot of time and money to be there, what experience do you want to give to these people and show what they mean to you? What do you want them to take away from it? And what story do you want them to tell about it years later? What do you want to stick with them? Not just like, oh, it was a really cool party and the food was really good and there was an open bar, but what what story do they tell when they talk about your wedding? And that's where we start, and then we can design ways to kind of make sure that we're making that impact.
So if somebody says to you, "Well, I want it to be romantic," how do you ask them questions to guide them in the direction where they need to be?
Yeah, so we really dig into the feelings, and we kind of go stage by stage. Like when they walk in, the first moment that people walk into the room, how do you want them to feel? If you want them to feel romantic, then we think about ways to kind of build that romance, and you can do it with lighting and flowers. And even if you don't have a huge budget for these kind of things, you can create moments of romance and connection. Like, are we creating some kind of ritual that people have to participate in when they come in that sets them up for a certain mood or activity? Is there something special written on their place card, something personalized that makes them feel really loved and seen and appreciated? Are you putting them at a table with people they've never met before and then giving them the tools to connect with those people? For example, a conversation menu that maybe gets them talking about romance. What's the most romantic thing anyone's ever done for you? And kind of greasing the wheels for the conversation to go a little bit deeper than it might on its own. Things like that. So just little details and moments that amplify these feelings. But we try to get even more specific about the feelings. Like, okay, what does romance mean to you? What does it look like? Tell me something that's really romantic. What's the most romantic moment you had as a couple? And then we can turn that into an experience at the wedding. We can almost recreate that feeling of romance that they tell me about as an experience for the guests.
I love that you're saying basically, let's pick a mood and a range, not a paint chip. It's not about
Yeah.
color, it's not about it's truly pulling it all together. So that is I love that. I love that. And it doesn't feel restrictive.
Yeah, and I do think a lot of wedding advice kind of has you start with the colors and everything. And again, I think then it feels kind of arbitrary. But, if the colors are really meaningful, if they come from the palette of your favorite place, maybe you took your first vacation as a couple to the Mediterranean and it was when you fell in love. So then you choose the colors based on, this little town in Greece that you went to. Or my husband and I, we had our wedding on our farm in Spain. We have an olive farm. And so naturally, like all of our colors were based on the things that grow on the farm. Like figs was a big color, and olive green and terracotta, and the colors were really taken from the landscape. And that's because the theme of our wedding was really wanting to share this place that's really meaningful to us with our guests. And we tied that in with sensory details as well. And this is something I guide couples to, is to not just think about the colors, but the textures and things like scent. So, for example, our kind of signature scent was figs. It was fig season. It was in August in Spain, which is when the figs ripen. And so we gave fig scented candles to our guests, and we had figs really heavily built into the decor. We had cut figs like in with our flowers and everything like that. And so we kind of created these sensory details where this smell and this image are now all tied together with, when people think about our wedding, or they might be reminded of our wedding when they smell figs or something like that.
I love that seasonality plays a role in the design process because it makes sense. You're not putting, holly and greens out in July. That wouldn't make sense. So having it all be encompassing really makes a lot of sense and just makes it a lot more inviting. I feel like there's a big mindset shift, especially for couples who come in with a winter date and they maybe have spring Pinterest boards, are there color combinations or other processes that you use to kind of help guide them to where they may want to be? And on the flip side, do you see mistakes you see with colors and vibes and settings and trying to have a cohesive feel, maybe too many colors or not enough contrast or everything feeling not quite what they had been going for? And how do you guide couples away from that?
Wouldn't say that I saw any major mistakes in that regard. I think it's more just that a lot of times I see couples just choosing things arbitrarily. And, there's so much inspiration out there and so many places that you can take inspiration from. And so I think a lot of times couples get kind of overwhelmed in Pinterest and things and end up sort of choosing colors and themes based on what they think looks cool. And it doesn't necessarily connect to anything very personal about them. And so I would just say I think a mistake a lot of couples make is just not being more intentional about the choices that they're making and making sure that everything kind of fits together. I've definitely seen weddings where it was just like a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and there wasn't maybe a whole cohesive story, or it just didn't feel necessarily particularly meaningful, or the choices themselves didn't feel meaningful. And I think when you make choices with a lot of intention and heart and making sure that it's aligned with who you are and what's important to you, then those things are a lot more resonant.
Makes a lot of sense. It totally makes sense. Okay, so if someone is listening and they're thinking, I have a vibe, I have colors, but everything still feels a little random, what are the key design anchors that you help people focus on to pull the whole look together?
Well, I would say before you even get into the colors and choosing the details and the flowers and all of those things, I would start with the feelings that you want to convey. How do you want people to feel? And then I think when you're really clear on that, it's easier to make those choices feel aligned, because when you know how you want to make someone feel, then you can work backwards and get into the details from that perspective and make sure that everything that you're doing, all of the decisions you're making, kind of support the feelings that you want to create. If you want people to feel cozy, then it's easier to make choices about lighting and colors and textures supporting a cozy vibe when you know that that's the feeling that you want to create. And I think people start with the details first and the look and sort of miss the overall feeling that they want people to have. And I think if you flip that and it's just kind of a simple mindset shift, it actually makes the details and designing the details much easier.
It makes a lot of sense. From your perspective, where do flowers make the most impact?
Yeah, I think this is another area where you can be really personalized. And I think like I love flowers, and actually I ended up, because the flowers were important to me and because my wedding was all about, it was really about the people and building connection. I had a very small wedding on my farm, and I really wanted it to feel like just a dinner party, like out in the field, and I wanted it to feel very not casual, because of course it was still a wedding, but I wanted it to feel homey and cozy. And so I actually did the flowers myself, and I took a flower design course just so that I could do this. And I don't necessarily recommend that people do this, because of course I was working on the flowers until the very last minute. And I even made my own bouquet, and it was beautiful and I was really proud of it, but I was so scattered like leading right up to the ceremony that I actually forgot my bouquet when I walked down the
Oh
aisle.
my
And I
gosh.
realized it. I realized it when I got to the front, and I was, standing in front of my now husband, and I was signaling to the planner, like, oh, my bouquet. And, she ran and got it. So it's in a lot of the ceremony photos. Um, but I really think that like personalizing the flowers so that they feel like an extension of this vibe that you want to create. And I think, there's so many cool things happening with flowers right now. I've seen just almost these artistic sculptural things. And if you're a really artsy couple, I think like go way out of the box and do something really crazy with the flowers so that they don't even look like traditional. They're not just in a vase, they're like hanging from the ceiling or whatever. I think, if you're the kind of couple that's super artistic, like really do something wild with the flowers. And if you're more, you're a more down to earth couple, I like this idea of like making it almost seem like I wanted it to look like the flowers just like came from the farm. And I mean, of course they didn't but we did incorporate a lot of elements from the farm, like the figs, and we had some wild grasses that I had picked. And we have a lot of like wild stuff growing on the farm. And so I picked a bunch of that and kind of stuck it in so that it had this organic feel of it, just like I wanted it to look like it was just kind of growing out of the table. And I didn't use vases. I put them directly into these kind of like, flower foam things so that it looked like they were just kind of piled up on the table. And I wanted it to have that kind of earthy, organic look. And so I think flowers can really be used in this creative way to reflect who the couple is, and it can be this earthy, organic thing or this sculptural high-end thing. And, there's just a lot of different things that you can do with flowers now that are so outside the box. And I think you can definitely make an impact with flowers. But again, I think it should start with like, who are we and why is this important to us and what do we want to showcase about ourselves? And, what is the feeling that we want people to take away?
I totally need to see a picture of your bouquet. You've got to send me a picture.
I would love to.
I would love to see what you created because it's funny. That's what people say that they want. They like, I want a wildflower feel with things that are just collected. And you just described that process. And I love it. I absolutely love it. Wow. Okay. So if somebody comes to you and they say, I have a very strict budget and you have a parameter that you're working within, do you prefer focusing budget on ceremony or reception?
I don't think you need to spend a lot of money on a ceremony to make it meaningful. I think the beauty of a ceremony is that it comes down to the ceremony itself that imbues it with meaning, and it's the words that you speak and how you bring people into the ceremony and make it meaningful for them as well, whether that's a collective vow or you have people involved in some way. And I think you can do all of those really meaningful things in a ceremony really without adding anything to a budget. And so I would say definitely put the money toward the reception. And again, this it comes down to like what is most important to us as a couple. If you're foodies, put the most money in the food. If you are you're musicians and music is really important to you and you go to concerts all the time as a couple and with your friends, then put the money toward the band. Or if you're really into fashion, put the money toward the clothes. I mean, at the end of the day, I think your budget should reflect what is most important to you. And don't waste money on things that aren't really important to you. If you don't care about food, don't waste money there. Focus it on the things that really do matter to you as a couple.
I'm literally typing this because it needs to be a quote that I'm stealing because I feel like people lose this. People really,
Totally.
really, they lose this whole perspective and they try to make everything amazing instead of doing maybe a deep dive into what really screams about who they are as a couple. And those few
Yeah.
simple upgrades give that huge impact. And it doesn't mean they're doubling their spend, but it takes it from pretty to, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah. 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 And I think there's a lot of pressure and this feeling of like, oh, we should have this and we should have this. And I think nothing is really a requirement at weddings, except for the people. And so it should come down to what's going to have the biggest impact on your guests, on your experience as a couple. What really is the most important thing for us at our wedding? And that's where you put your budget. And so many things can actually be skipped and no one will miss them. You don't need monogrammed cocktail napkins and you don't need a photo booth or a donut wall or a champagne tower. Like none of those things are mandatory. And I think it's really important to align your spending with, what your overall intention is for your wedding.
Yeah. Overall intention. That is so, so, so true. So true. So I'm going to ask you to kind of switch gears a little bit because I know you work with couples, but you probably also work with designers, florists, and planners. And I want to flip it so that if there's florists and designers and planners listening and they want to up level how they present design to clients, what are some systems or tools that you love? I know everybody really leans on Pinterest and they lean on maybe a couple videos from TikTok in a couple different spaces. But when you're working with the professional side, the vendor side, what are tools that you use to communicate with them that are maybe a little different?
Yeah, well, I have my own framework that I use for my clients, and I do work a lot directly with wedding planners, designing the experience for their clients. And basically, to break it down kind of simply, we start with the overall meaning and the guiding intention of what the goal of the wedding is for the couple, what's most important to them, what is this really about? And then we kind of get into different design pillars. But I would say the thing that has the biggest impact, and I think this is true for every wedding vendor, is starting with how you want people to feel. And I would actually urge people in the wedding industry, especially in the luxury wedding industry, where people have really high expectations nowadays, that you're even thinking about how you want your clients to feel when they work with you, and whether or not your processes and the way that you communicate and deliver work to clients is giving them those feelings. Because I think a lot of a lot of people miss this, and they're not designing their customer experience, and then they're leaving clients with maybe a negative impression of them because working with them wasn't the best experience. And I think it's really important and probably will have the biggest impact if you start with how do I want people to feel? And, if you're working with a couple, it's how do I want guests to feel? But also as a vendor, how do I want my clients to feel working with me? And am I doing things that make them feel this way?
That's
And I think
great
once you
advice.
kind of focus on that, it makes a huge impact on the impression that you leave with people.
I feel like it makes it more collaborative instead of
Mhm.
like you're going to do this and I'm going to do this and that's it. It's less transactional and it's much more collaborative.
Yeah, definitely. And I think experience design is a collaboration. And that's why I always design with my clients, not for them. And we do everything together. We brainstorm together because they know the people that this experience is for. I don't know their friends and family. I mean, I know a lot about experience design and I know a lot about the wedding industry. I've been to hundreds of weddings, but I don't know the people that are going to be at their wedding like they know them. And so they have a much better insight into what's going to land with people, what's going to leave an impression. And so that's why it's really important to really have them be a part of the design process.
Yes. And it goes back to that collaboration and working
Hmm.
together.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So I want to do just real quick, I want to do, if you're up for it, a real
Hmm.
quick fire round. So
Okay.
I just want you to answer with your gut. Don't overthink. But I'm going to say a wedding thing and give you two
Hmm.
options. And I want to know which one you're like, ooh, this, ooh, that. So,
Okay.
you ready?
Hmm.
All right. So, ceremony flowers, a big arch installation or a ground meadow?
Ooh, ground meadow.
Ditto. Reception vibe. Do you want those long feasting tables or the classic rounds?
Long tables every day.
100%. I've even seen the rounds set up in feasting tables in cool designs
Oh
now.
yeah, I like that.
I love those. Okay.
Hmm.
Color story. Do you want soft tones and layered, or do you want bold, juicy contrast?
Bold, juicy contrast.
I think for me, it's kind of seasonally based. I feel like
Hmm.
soft tones and layered is great for spring, but the rest of the
Hmm.
year, give me that bold, juicy contrast.
Totally.
Biggest bang for your buck upgrade, would you say, is linens or lighting?
Lighting, definitely.
100%. It's like bring on the candles.
Yep.
Will you share with me one trend that you see that you hope sticks around?
Definitely, like all the wedding forecasts for next year are saying more immersiveness, and I think that's what I'm all about, and more immersive experiences for guests, more outside the box experiences as well, not just dinner and dancing, but other activities that are untraditional.
So one of the weddings we did, it's 2 years ago now. One of the things that this bride did, she had so many family members that were younger that was there. So instead of cocktail hour, she had a petting zoo come in.
Oh my God, I love that.
It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. It was
That's so
so
cool.
thoughtful. It was so outside her wedding is still probably one of my favorites that we've ever done. Because I was like, who does this? This is the coolest thing ever. It was amazing.
Yeah, I
So,
love that. Yeah.
and one trend that you're ready to lovingly retire would be
All white weddings.
ditto. Oh my gosh. I love white and green and it has its place, but I don't want to
Yeah.
do it every weekend. No, let's mix it up. And the baby's breath,
Yeah.
like the all baby's
Oh
breath.
gosh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I saw somebody the other day made baby's breath shawls, like these I was like,
Oh my
no.
gosh.
I was like, absolutely not. I refuse to do that. No. Oh my gosh. I'm going to screenshot those answers in my brain for future design talks with people. Be like, I've talked to the professionals and they say we should. Oh my gosh. Julie, this has been so good. Thank you for just being patient. You have been patient, kind, and I really, really, really appreciate your insight. A couple who is maybe sitting with a messy Pinterest board and a date on the calendar, what's that one first simple step that they can take this week to move towards a more cohesive, intentional wedding design?
I would say think about the story that you want people to tell about your wedding 10 years from now. What is that one key moment that you want them to remember? And start with that. Start with the big feelings and then work your way back to the details and the color palette and things like that.
I love it because, yet again, it's personalized. It makes sense. Okay. So before we sign off, where can people find you online? Where can they stalk all your work and maybe choose to work with you?
Yeah, my website is theexperientialwedding.com, and my Instagram is also the Experiential Wedding. And I also have a Substack called Designed for Connection, where I share a lot of insights about experience design for weddings and making weddings more personal and meaningful.
Wow. And looking at all of your work and looking at all of the things on your social has just been inspiring, honestly. I love
Thanks.
how you have such an amazing blend of truly personalized couples and all of those things that really make it unique. It's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to link all of that in our show notes. So if you're listening while you're driving, farming, designing a mock-up, or maybe doing the dishes, you can grab those links later. If you enjoyed this episode, take a screenshot, share it to your stories, tag both of us so you can see what you're designing. And if you're planning your own wedding and want to dive deeper into flowers and design and making your day feel like you, make sure you're following the Flower Files and wherever you listen to podcasts. Julie, thank you again for hanging out with me this morning and nerding out a little on some wedding design.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, thank you. All right, friends, that's it for this episode of the Flower Files. Go create something beautiful, and I'll see you next time.